Well, the EU has promised $800 million to Greece to deal with a refugee and migrant surge from Turkey. That's after Turkey said it will allow hundreds of thousands of people to pass through. Greece and Bulgaria have stepped up security on their side of the land border with Turkey. The Greek coastguard is now actively repelling boats trying to get to its islands across the eastern Mediterranean route. Ankara's decision to open the borders breaches an agreement it made with the EU in 2016 to resettle refugees and stop them from crossing into Europe. Turkey now hosts around 4 million refugees and says it cannot cope with any more people fleeing the latest violence in Idlib. John Soropoulos joins me now live from the Greek island of Lesbos. John, I believe just in the last hour the Greek PM has spoken. What's he had to say?
The Greek Prime Minister stressed the need for a common asylum policy. It's been one of his main causes in the European Union since he came to power 8 months ago. He said that we have not used our time wisely since the last refugee crisis. The time has come for us to do this. We need to show we are sharing the burden effectively and to show innovation. We cannot leave the burden pushed onto the shoulders of external EU member states. This is a cry of help from Europe's Mediterranean coast, that the external border countries cannot be gatekeepers to Europe without solidarity and support from the rest of the continent. Let's listen to what he had to say.
This is a blatant attempt by Turkey to use desperate people to promote its geopolitical agenda and to divert attention from the horrible situation in Syria. The tens of thousands of people who tried to enter Greece over the past few days did not come from Idlib. They have been living safely in Turkey for a long period of time. Most of them speak Turkish fluently. And Europe will not be blackmailed by Turkey over the refugee issue.
John, you're on the island of Lesbos. We've seen a steady stream of people arriving there over the past few days. Is that continuing, or is it showing signs of slowing down?
Yes, it is. And the reason we're standing here at the passenger port is that just moments ago there was a police operation to clear away some dozens of Afghan young men who were trying to climb this fence behind me and get onto that ferry which is leaving for Athens shortly. The police just swept the area clean. They've chased people up into the hills. It shows you, and we saw earlier similar scenes, how badly these people want to get off the island, move further inland, move onto the Greek mainland, cross over into other parts of Europe and begin their lives. A lot of these young men are in their teens. They haven't finished school. Many of them have dreams of going to university, becoming engineers, becoming doctors. They want to follow careers. Their families have sacrificed land or savings to send them here on their own because they can't all afford to come over. And this is their chance. This is their one chance to make something of themselves and to save their families. The harsh reality, however, is that on the European side, the onslaught of the numbers is seen as overwhelming. And you can see the desperation through the number of regimes that exist here in Greece alone. There are the people who've been crossing over for 5 years, who've been allowed to apply for asylum in the normal manner. There's a second category of people who applied for asylum since January 1st, when a new asylum law took effect here in Greece, and they are being fast-tracked, and they're supposed to be processed in 2 months. So they've been given priority because this is part of an effort to increase the number of returns of rejected asylum seekers, so those deportees can be sent back to Turkey quickly. And now there's a new regime since Turkey opened its borders on February 27th of people who won't be considered for asylum at all. And those people are now being kept 20 yards away from me, behind this fence, in the port area. They're going to be shipped back to Athens tomorrow, we're told, although it isn't a final plan. It is the intention of the Greek authorities to keep them in detention and not to give them a chance to apply for asylum, because they're considered part of a Turkish policy that is against Europe rather than as people who crossed over as free individuals.
Thank you for that. That's John Soropoulos there live from Lesbos. Ruvi Zeiler is a refugee law specialist at the University of Reading. He joins us now live from Reading. Good to have you on the programme. The EU Commission's President, Ursula von der Leyen, said that the EU will give Greece all of the support it needs in terms of what's happening at Greece's border with Turkey. But Greece, as we've just heard there, is continuing to turn people back. So what should we take from that message of support? What is the EU actually likely to do in real terms to help these people?
Yeah, so the Prime Minister of Greece said something that is correct, which is that since the refugee crisis in 2015, Europe has not come together to form a policy of responsibility sharing that alleviates some of the burden that otherwise disproportionately falls on frontier states such as Greece and Italy. There was an emergency relocation scheme that was going to relocate about 120,000 people from both Italy and Greece. And even those places haven't fully been met, and no permanent scheme has been put in place. So he's absolutely right that the European Union hasn't stepped to the plate and doesn't yet seem to be doing so. He's of course wrong that the consequence is that if somebody is seeking protection in Greece, which is a member of the European Union and bound by EU law, then they can be on that basis turned away. And so the European Commission's president may be willing to provide Greece with financial support, with border guards, but that's not actually what Greece and what refugees need. What is needed is a European agreement for genuine solidarity and responsibility sharing across the EU. And that is really the mission of the European Commission if it wants to genuinely help Greece rather than help Greece fend off refugees.
I just want to come back to that point you made. I remember covering in Brussels at the time when that EU plan was agreed on, that I think it was 130,000 people would be resettled from Italy and Greece. There was so much fanfare at the time. Why hasn't that been implemented? Why hasn't that worked out?
Well, the reality is there was, first of all, a genuine resistance from several European Union states to the resolution for the relocation itself. So Hungary, the Czech Republic, Slovakia and Poland have said initially they're not going to cooperate, and that has even led the European Commission to launch infringement proceedings against them in the European Court of Justice. Afterwards, other European countries which have nominally said they'll cooperate have really been very sluggish in offering relocation spaces in their countries. And so what was supposed to happen very quickly and for ultimately a fairly small, moderate number if we compare it to 3.7 million refugees that are in Turkey. So we were talking about 120,000 people across a continent or a European Union region of over 500 million people. What was supposed to happen fairly quickly and rapidly hasn't actually fully materialized. There were some people relocated, but the numbers haven't reached 120,000 over a course of a couple of years. And then the attempt to use that basis of the emergency relocation scheme to create a permanent basis for relocating refugees across the European Union on an equitable basis that takes into account GDP per capita, unemployment, the capacity of countries to absorb refugees, etc. That scheme that was proposed has effectively been stalled coming to the last European parliamentary elections, and it hasn't been resurrected since.
Thank you for your analysis. That's Ruvi Zaiglo there, a refugee law specialist at the University of Reading. Thank you.